Well, hey everyone, this is Matt Lorelli coming here from Unofficial Networks. I got a very special guest with us here today. He needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyways. So we're joined by Bode Miller, six-time Olympic medalist, turned ski engineer and chief innovation officer for Crosson Ski. So welcome, Bode. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So it's a big announcement that you're working with a new brand for yourself. So I kind of wanted to dive into the actual tech that you're working on for Crosson Ski. So you mentioned kind of how obviously ski racing has been a big part of your career and how you wanted to bring that into the free ride skis, kind of like the Descenter series. So the first question is, how are you implementing that ski racing tech with a free ride ski?
Well, it's not so much ski racing tech. It's more philosophical than anything. I think it's, in my sport, you paid attention to every detail, and the skis were so critical as to the outcome of races and safety and everything else. And it's been a process of reverse auction in the open market of skis for the last 40 years or so, where it's really a race to the bottom. Who can build cheaper and cheaper and cheaper? And, the advent of early rise, rocker, wider skis, side cut, they all made it so you could kind of cheat the system. You didn't really have to build a good ski. They kind of still worked. And as long as everyone was kind of doing the same thing, you ended up, if you think of it logically, right? You're in the beginning of the season, you're looking to buy a ski. You look at last year's, okay, these skis were pretty good. These ones are $100 less. Let's buy it. They might not be as good as last year, but you've already made the purchase anyway. And it's incrementally it's diluting people's knowledge of what a ski can do. And it's happened over 40 years pretty consistently. We've seen a ton of boutique ski companies kind of pop up, but they don't really come with the engineering background of knowing what a really good ski generally is made of, and a lot of the subtleties of how to get different aspects of ski design to work together to build something really solid. So it's not really race stuff, although the experience I had with the top engineers in ski building over the last 20 years definitely was super informative for me and allowed me to understand a lot of how different components work together and how to get different attributes, and functional attributes out of a ski. So it comes from just trying to bring that philosophy of having a really good ski at a reasonable price, something that's going to keep people safe, that works over a huge variety of terrain. In racing, we can't have a ski that just works good when it's this temperature or this snow condition. You want something that works well all the time, as best you can. And that was a huge part of engineering, is really you had to figure out how to build skis that weren't worse in one to be better in many. They had to be really good in everything. And I think that's been missing from ski sport for a long time. And it's, if you think of it, right, most companies, they want you to buy 5 pairs of skis. So they want really narrow little silos. This ski works good here, buy 5 pairs and you're covered. I think that's unrealistic. And I want to have, 1 or 2 pairs that basically from the first day to the last day of a season in powder or groomers or ice, you have an awesome day and an awesome, experience, and you're safe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know that even just myself, looking for skis each year can be, a little overwhelming because there's every ski is kind of promoting the same thing, and you can get lost in what you're looking for. So it's interesting to hear you say how that, Crosson Ski is trying to rise above that cookie cutter model maybe some of these other brands are using. And in reading about Crosson Ski, just based on what was online even, one of the quotes that really stuck out is that you want to create skis that motivate skiers to progress and self-express on the mountain. Progression, I think maybe for some people could be a little stagnant at a certain point in their life. They get to a part they're comfortable with skiing and they don't really think that they can go further. So I'm curious, how does Crosson Ski, make that more accessible for the average skier to continue to progress their skills?
Yeah, I mean, Crosson builds skis that are designed to enhance confidence. So with more confidence comes the ability to experiment or try different things. You're not going to try something new if the last time you tried something you face planted and it was miserable, right? So having the confidence to try something new and know that your ski is going to do the correct thing, it's going to be predictable and it's going to perform, is really it's the fundamental aspect of what a ski should be, above and beyond everything else. Skiing is all about trust and confidence. You can't make a certain turn unless you try to make that turn. You're not just going to it doesn't just happen by accident. So you have to attempt to do it, and then, you know, hopefully it works. And most skis now actually don't have a very solid platform of building confidence. You know, you kind of want to stay within your envelope because they feel like they're right on the edge all the time. And I can say from personal experience that that's generally the case. So, you know, the biggest thing that we do at Crosson is we build skis that are good for everybody. So a beginner, I've put, you know, first timers, you know, very intermediate skiers on them, people who primarily snowplow, really have trouble controlling speed down steeper parts, all the way up to me and some of the guys at the mountain who are, you know, landing backwards off huge cliffs. And they really perform on everything. And it's one of those misnomers in the sport that a really good ski will only work for really good skiers, and a really bad ski really doesn't work for anybody. And actually kind of does work better for somebody who's only going 2 miles an hour, because you're just not doing that much, right? You could basically be sliding on a piece of wood down the hill if you're just going 2 miles an hour on a bunny slope in a snowplow. But the reality is a really good ski does work well across all spectrums because it has really basic attributes. It has really good edge grip, really good balance front to back. The ski doesn't do anything crazy. It's not hooking up or trying to, you know, the tail's not grabbing or catching. You know, stable and really predictable. And that ultimately that builds that confidence and allows people to express, allows people to try new things without having severe punishment as their only outcome. Because that's generally, if you're trying to try new things and you're on a rickety ski, you're going to have nasty crashes, and most people just don't want to go through that. So they just stay in their comfort zone. And, you know, that's a huge part of why I chose to go with Crosson in the first place. Was the intent was there, and the desire to build that was there. And yeah, I mean, I think we're well on our way.
Oh, that's really awesome to hear. Even just hearing you talk about kind of the, you know, the personal touches that you're applying, as well as I'm sure there's other people that are involved in Crosson that are developing these skis, is refreshing to hear. Because I think sometimes that, you know, when we're looking at the big name brands, we think, okay, where is that ski being made, and who is that for, right? So hearing you talk about that the skis can progress across all levels is pretty interesting. You know, you made a couple other points about, you know, getting away from those, let's call them like big box brands. I'm curious, is there anything else that you want to tell customers that, you know, why should a skier go to Crosson, you know, over one of those big box brands that they're more familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff, honestly, but you know, I don't like selling. I like people to make their own choice. But, you know, we treat it like we would want to be treated as a customer too. You know, 30-day money back guarantee. If you don't like the skis, you don't keep them. I mean, that there's a lot of different styles out there, and people have different preferences, and there is no right or wrong way to ski, in my opinion. The guys who started skiing with leather boots and wooden skis, you see the pictures of them, they're all smiling. They seem to have a good time, and their equipment is rickety as crap. So, you know, I think there's no, if you're having fun, it's the right thing, right? One of the big things is safety. Those dudes on wooden skis hurt themselves a lot, and skiing has a history of causing a lot of injuries, in some cases really severe. So safety is one of the big things that I would focus on for customers. Is if you're skiing down and you hit a patch of ice and you're on a not well designed ski, you're gonna have a much more dangerous situation happen. The ski can wash out. You know, it's not good. When you have this really well designed ski, it not only performs well on a bigger variety of terrain where you're gonna have a better experience over a larger, you know, group of days throughout a winter, but if something goes sideways, if something happens, somebody just cuts in front of you, or you hit an ice patch, or you hit something, or need to do something quickly, you want to have a ski that really performs well. I liken it to a car, right? If you're in a car and you have super underinflated ball tires on a crappy minivan with shot suspension, you know, yes, it'll get you from A to B. If skiing as a mode of transport, they're skiing to enjoy it, to have fun. So why not have a car that does all the things you want it to do? And just like a car, there's a million different versions of what that is, right? There's really good trucks, there's really good SUVs, and really good sports cars. But in this case, you know, we just wanted to put something out there that we felt really confident will fit that model, where people are going to be safe, they're going to have a really good experience, you know, and they're going to be pushed by their natural desire to explore once their confidence is higher.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting to hear. I know that you got me intrigued at the very least. So, you know, I do have to ask you some questions here, kind of about your career since we have you. I mean, of course, your name precedes yourself as, you know, the most successful American skier as far as medals, and or a male skier as far as medals and podiums. So, the first thing I wanted to start with was just how ski tech itself has evolved. You know, from those first days of you, you know, cutting your teeth trying to make it on the scene to the very end of your career into now. You know, how have you seen ski tech evolve? Maybe like, you know, some of the big noticeable things.
Yeah, I mean, you know, well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Skio, which is it's an app that Crosson is working in conjunction with Skio. We're the only factory mount version of it. Yeah, people can buy it on the open market, but we're the only, you know, manufacturing partner with that. And Skio is a sensor system where one little sensor goes on either ski just in front of the binding, and you wear one on your chest like a heart rate monitor, and it uses the telemetry in your phone to measure everything. And I would say, you know, that's a huge thing that was missing for my whole career. Was when I was one of the first people. I was the first one to start the shape ski thing with K2 in racing. And, you know, then there was the evolution of early rise and rockered skis, and everything got wider. But there's certain things that are really stagnant. Bindings, for instance, haven't really changed much in 40 or so years. And it's a system, right? It's just like a car. I hate making the analogy again, but tires, suspension, you know, chassis, right? If you have really good tires, but, you know, horrible suspension, the car is not going to work correctly. And right now we're sort of in that in-between phase where the skis, I believe, have gotten better. The technology has evolved. There's been some really great ideas and great evolution there. But the rest of the system, the bindings and boots, haven't really gotten better. So they're not really much safer. They're not really much better for performance, especially on a wider ski. All the bindings have these screw patterns that are about that far apart, designed for skis that are about this wide. Now all the skis are much wider, and no one's really adapted to that stuff. But one of the things that Skio does is objectifies all that information, because there's no, you know, ski test, as you said, can be overwhelming because you kind of know that the people are getting paid off the back end to like say, make sure we're in the top 3 of this ski test. And with no objective data, if you're a golfer, you know, a golf driving, you know, test or review in a magazine is going to have launch angle, you know, compression rates of the club. It has what weights move around. It has all this objective stuff that you can say, okay, you know, yes, this tester liked this one better, but here's all the data as well that kind of either supports that or refutes it. And then with Skio, we really felt like, and again, we're a very transparent company. We don't say that we're the, you know, hands down the best. We're not, you know, everything and everything to skiing, but we have a very transparent view of things like, look, test it, see what you think, and here's some objective data as well. So if you think you stop faster on those skis, or you can turn quicker, or you can pull tighter radius, or they don't make you as tired, test it out. You have objective data that's not, it's not somebody telling you, oh, you're doing this when you ski, or you look like that. It'll give you all this information objectively based on technology and sensors. And I think that allows things to move in a different way. It's democratizing that information that was generally reserved for instructors or coaches or, you know, I guess some experts. In this case, yeah, we want to share that with people and let them experience. Like, look, okay, I felt different on this ski, and here's the data to back that up. And if our skis are better, great, and we think they're going to be. But if not, then absolutely, at least you have that information, and we want you to have a good time on whatever ski you're on.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing kind of how that technology is coming along. I'm interested to see how that's applied to things like you just said, like with ski testing and, you know, getting hard data. At least that, I know that's something I'd be interested in for, you know, objectified data.
Well, and internally it helps us as well, because if the person allows us, we can see, look, you bought a 118, right? It's a great ski. I love it. I ski on it, you know, on powder days. But if I'm primarily on groomers, I'm not skiing a 118 underfoot, right? I'm going to ski something that's narrower, that's made for groomed trails. So if the people allow us to, we can say, you know, do a push notification halfway through a season. Hey, we notice you've skied 99.9% of your time on groomed trails. Maybe try the 98 underfoot or the carving ski, the 78 underfoot. You know, it might give you a better experience out there. You might have more fun, you know? And I think that again, it's gentle, and we're basically just trying to give information like this is what makes sense and you make the decision. But I think it's been missing for a long time in the sport, and I'm happy to bring it.
Yeah, that's super exciting. One of the other things too that was mentioned on Crosson is that, throughout your career, there were points where, you would request a ski manufacturer implement something new and, something that you were looking for in your ski, but it seemed like you just kept getting denied. So this is a two-part question. One is to start with, how exciting is it that you can kind of mold these skis however you see fit? And then two, what were those requests that you made back in your career that kept getting turned down and turned down and turned down?
The binding setup was one. The binding thing drove me crazy because if you take a regular binding now, even a top performance binding, and you hack your ski into the ground on just the inside edge, your foot will move over like a couple millimeters in the binding and it'll just stay there. And so if you're skiing, your foot is constantly moving from the inside to the outside, still within the binding, but it just shifts around because the center, there's not really, it's kind of equalizing forces, and all that friction of your boot against the plate of the binding will hold it there. And you get a totally different performance if your foot is not in the middle of the ski. And I felt like it's like saying we're going to eliminate suspension in cars. We're just going to put huge fat tires on them, like real big, like monster truck tires. You don't need suspension if you have a tire that's 5 feet big. Sure, you don't, but you lose a lot of performance. And you're having one thing that's one job do 2 jobs or even 3 jobs. And that's not a great way if you have the option to do something different. So bindings and boots, the release mechanism, the whole system there was really frustrating. The plate. In terms of ski technology, it primarily focused around this a hinge point technology thing that came about when I was on Rosignol, and then it was also there on Atomic. And right at that time is when we first started using the actual tip curve. So where the ski comes up off the snow, if you extend that side cut past the contact point, so if your ski comes up, your widest point isn't where it's touching the snow, your widest point is up off the snow. It continues to get wider. Then when you tip the ski up, that widest point digs into the snow, and you actually use the radius of the tip this way to dictate the beginning of the turn. And then the ski has to deflect. It has torsional weakness. It moves this way. And then you end up finding a clean ski. But the problem with that is it's always grinding. So that once it's touching, it's not coming up out of the snow. It's going to continue to grind, even though the pressure becomes too great. So it can't keep going. It just pushes through the snow. So it's bent more than it should be for where you're going. You're pointing this way and it's pointing that way. And it's just plowing through the snow. And you don't notice it maybe if you're on really hard ice or if you're not very sensitive to that. For me, it was like night and day. I was like, it's like having the brakes on all the time. Like, I don't want a ski that has to do that. I love the fact that it turns so quickly and the radius is great. And there was some good things to it, but I couldn't deal with that constantly being that braking system just to get tighter radius. I said, there's a better way. And we'd done it before, and that was the evolution. That's the direction everybody went in. And, so we never got back to that. And that's something that has massive application for your average skier, because what ends up happening is you build a deflection point in the ski where it's slightly softer to slightly stiffer, and the ski kind of hinges there. You wouldn't notice it flexing with your hand or any other way, but with all that pressure on it, you'll have an actual pivot point that makes it feel, the grip point is maybe more attuned to like a hockey skate or something like that, where the pressure is always in one spot. It's not about the very tip, the middle, and the very tail all having, because a lot of the time when you're skiing, the tip doesn't track perfectly. It hits a little piece of snow and bops up and then drops away, and that disrupts the way the ski goes through the snow. If you're dealing with something much more underfoot, you get a much more consistent, reliable platform, and it creates really easy, quick pressure. As we said, skiing is about confidence and commitment. With that style ski that evolved while I was on World Cup, you really had to tip the ski up to a high edge angle, and it carved away from you, and then it kind of hooked up. So you had to commit to being way inside and knowing the ski was going to pick you up and hook up at the end. I really feel like on the general market, that's asking a lot of the average person to commit their body down the hill and really have a high edge angle and hope that the ski comes around. I wanted something that was really stable underfoot, that the moment they tipped it up, just a tiny edge angle, they could feel a significant G-force push against the bottom of their foot. So it started to go, and that lets them say, oh, okay, I can lean in further because that thing's always there. It's pushing right away. And that's what that hinge does. It just creates a more stable, more consistent platform, much closer to where your foot is. The middle of a ski now is pretty straight, right? So if you're talking about that with no hinge, it doesn't have a lot of side cut. It's not gonna push or do much. You need the whole ski. That's where the side cut is to really create that. But with a hinge, you get this really active pressure, and it tracks really well in a straight line, because that hinge, if you have no edge angle or low edge angle, it's still on a straight part of the ski. So the fact that it has a little bit of extra bend doesn't plow snow. It's being a much faster, easier, more consistent performance for your average person. I think that's one of the things that was to miss out on, but I'm really excited to bring it back to the average consumer, because again, that's a huge part of building confidence.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. You know, there's so many things that even as like a ski nut that I consider myself that I've never thought of. So I really appreciate you sharing that. You've been great so far here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I want to ask a couple questions here that were submitted by our audience. We kind of posed a question, hey, we're going to be interviewing Bode, and this is kind of what we got. So the first one's here from Jeff B, and this was on our Facebook page. He said, I'm looking for a ski that will do it all in the Northeast. Which ski from Crosson Ski would you recommend?
The Descenter 98. It's I would say, and like I said, we're very transparent. I would say the only downside to it is that it's a little bit, it almost feels like ceramic-y a little bit. The top sheet is not ideal for right now. I would go with a much gummier top sheet for next year. But if you can get over, it's like, again, I liken it to golf drivers all the time, right? People say, oh, I don't like this top sheet. It's a little bit rattly. Like, it's like the sound of your driver. You know, when you hit a ball, if it makes it sound like a metal baseball bat hitting a rock, that pisses some people off and they can't deal with it. But if your ball is going dead straight 320, you're like, all right, I'll tolerate it. You know, yeah. In this case, that's what's going on. Is that I did some different stuff with the ski, and it turned out to be slightly more, like I said, ceramic-y than I would have ideally liked. But the performance is off the charts. I've been skiing. I skied it in copper on ice-ish. I mean, it's Colorado ice. It's not real ice, but you can go hip to the ground, like full pin GS turns, and it's rock solid underfoot. You can chuck it sideways on that crusty, like bally ice, and it just grips no problem. And it's a 98 underfoot, so you can ski it if you get a powder day or you get some loose crud, and it's got a really low tip rise. So like we were saying, right, we do use that early rise, the side cut continues, and it's got this, but it doesn't have any ski jump elf shoe type tip. And that makes it so when you're going through crud or, you know, skied out stuff, that it's not super reactive. If it hits a ball of snow or a little mini mogul, it's not going to jut sideways. It just kind of cuts straight through. That ski has been exceptional. And I would say it's especially for East Coast, it would be my go-to. Definitely take a look at the carving ski as well, which is a 78 underfoot. So it's not, I always laugh because our old skis used to be 62 underfoot, and now everyone thinks a 78 underfoot's like incredibly narrow, but it's an incredibly powerful ski, the carving ski. And if you like groomers mostly, and the grip on ice is off the charts. I mean, the 98 gets crazy grip, but it is still much wider than essentially the binding plate. So the way the binding screws go into the ski, they're kind of in the middle, and the ski is quite a bit wider. So you're always going to have some deflection there. The binding, everything flexes. The 78 eliminates that to a huge degree. So it's much narrower. You get that rock solid feel on ice. And, you know, if you're primarily a groomer skier, then that's a fantastic one to try.
Awesome. Okay. So the last one here, this comes from Ryan M. This is kind of, you know, less about the ski tech, but he's curious, you know, are you still excited to go skiing after all these years, or do you ever just need like kind of a break for a little while? You know, is that excitement of, you know, being out on the mountain, do you still have that like you used to as a kid?
I can't say that I have it like I used to as a kid. I mean, I was a
Yeah.
maniac. I didn't miss a single day that the mountain was open for 3 years at Cannon. So, but I'm still super psyched. I have probably 15, 16 days already this year. You know, and I ski with my kids. My wife always asks me if it frustrates me skiing with her or the kids, and absolutely not. I would be a fantastic caddy in golf because I just like being outside. I don't really care so much about hitting the ball or any of that stuff. I just like looking at stuff and, you know, being outside. So whether I'm skiing slow or fast on whichever skis, and really growing up in New Hampshire was a gift because if you're a fair weather skier, you're not going to do a whole lot of skiing back there. So I learned how to enjoy basically minus 50 to, you know, with wind to 40 and raining. And I enjoyed it all, and that's still there. I'll go skiing any day with anyone. And matter of fact, I might go up right after this today.
Nice. I can appreciate that insight because same here. I'm Northeast skier, and you know, you take what you can get, right? I mean,
Yeah. And you can figuring out how to make things that most people would think suck fun is a really important skill for life, period. So I look at that as probably my most valuable lesson that I got from New Hampshire was learning how to make really tough, sucky situations fun. And they're not just, you're not faking it. Maybe for sometimes you fake it in the beginning, but eventually it becomes real and you're just really good at it. And I can have fun doing just about anything, especially skiing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. Those are all the questions I had for you. Is there anything that you wanted to, you know, leave us with here to close out? Anything last bit about, you know, Crosson Ski?
No, just that, you know, again, I would encourage people to take a look. I know it is, you know, it's always an investment, right? Skiing is expensive, period. But you know, if you communicate with us, we'll do our absolute best to take care of everybody, make sure that they're happy with what they get, and you know, you're not stuck with something the way you would be with one of the big box store brands. So yeah, our mission is to have people have a good time out there. So I hope people jump on board.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate you, you know, spending some time here. Hope you get some turns in today. I'll be jealous if you do. But yeah, for now we'll sign off, and thanks again, Bode.
All right, thanks.